session here, and we're here to talk about the Court of Combinations on the second floor, so we'll jump right into that. How's that? Before we go tonight.
Okay.
How you all are doing this. I typed up, it's kind of where we're at now, what I believe we need at a minimum, and then what other counties have faced recently. All of our surrounding counties pretty much have expanded. Court services have expanded. Judicial officers have dealt with space issues over the last, I would say, 5 years. And I have a lot of that outlined on the back side. John went with us when we toured Washington County and Jackson County and Clark County, which was very eye-opening, gave us a lot of things to think about. But the situation we're in now, and I understand, certainly we could have been down here banging on the door a lot more frequently than we have been. The health crisis has kind of put a lot of these things on the back burner. But we've known we were going to have a new magistrate for 3 years. We've known for sure for 2 years, and we've had a magistrate for over a year. And it's causing a lot of problems upstairs, not just for the court administration, but as the prosecutor's office will tell you. Problems for the prosecutor's office, problems for the public defenders, problems for the public in general in court access. We're currently operating, as you know, upstairs with 3 judicial officers and only 2 hearing spaces. I personally am sharing my office with Judge Frazier. Her desk is in my office. She doesn't have a phone. We have no place to meet privately with attorneys or to hold conference calls, etc. Our support staff is overutilized. We have no room for additional help. I've got 4 people crammed into my space, which there's no room to social distance right now, so we're making the best with that we can, but we really should probably have no more than 3 people in the space. We have 4, and couldn't certainly add anybody else. One thing we're lacking upstairs is no private conference space for attorneys and clients, which is something a lot of courthouses obviously have. Right now, before the pandemic, attorneys and clients were meeting in my vestibule, in my waiting room. You had to walk past an inmate. If you coming from the public and you needed to go to my window, you would in all likelihood have to walk past an inmate with his attorney, not past them, but between them, to get to my window to get service if you're a member of the public. So that's problematic. As Doug and the sheriff can say, we don't have any secure holding area for inmates, which is something we should take a look at if we're looking at making changes. Right now, inmates are brought over and left in the jury box with full access to the public. There's ways that we could secure them, and right now we're not bringing a lot of inmates over because we're using video options. We're using as much video options as we can, but we can't do everything by video, and once the pandemic's over, there'll be fewer things we'll be allowed to do by video. But our conference space is limited. We have only 1 jury room. We could only have 1 jury trial at a time. It's not been an issue yet, but it certainly could be. Chris is here from the prosecutor's office. He can kind of tell you about some of the space issues he has upstairs.
Can we do that now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in our office, right now, what used to be our conference room is being used as an attorney's office. What used to be the file room is being used as an attorney's office, and what used to be like a break room years ago is being used as an office. We have deputy prosecuting attorneys who are sharing office space. They don't have their own offices, and we have our investigator and our other assistant who share an office. And then out front, there's no room for anybody else to come. Ideally, we would probably need 2 conference rooms as much as we're meeting with people and have people come in and out, whether they're victims or other people or witnesses. It's not real conducive to bring those people back and meet with them in our individual offices, as they have to pass through a whole bunch of files and that kind of stuff. So ideally, I'd like to see 2 conference rooms, and in a perfect world, I'd like to see what's like a war room. Basically, if you're setting up for a big trial, you kind of need a room to get everything laid out and prepared, and that you can kind of separate off from your own office and from everything else. So ideally, and I'd also like to see, right now our child support division is separate from the prosecutor's office. although, you know, the prosecutor, we are in charge of the child support division, I'd like to bring them over for supervisory and safety reasons. Bring them over into, you know, one big office and have them there, whether that be one window where everyone can come to, or whether that's having a separate window on one side for child support, another window for criminal. I'm fine with either one of those things, but, yeah, we are crammed in there, and I think John, you've been up there, and remember Mike, I think you've been up there too, and Bob, I think you might have been as well. We're crammed in there sitting on top of each other, and especially when those deputy prosecutors are sharing office space. They're trying to be on a phone call with the victim a lot of times, and you've got officers who are in there, you know, maybe working on a case as a witness, or maybe working on a search warrant with the other deputy prosecutor. It's just, you can't pay attention, you can't figure out what's going on, and people on the other end can hear the other conversations happening, and it's very distracting. So we'd like to remain in the courthouse. I think it's very important that we be right here where everything's accessible, and we can jump from court to court if need be. You know, if we happen to forget a file, forget something, it's easy to run it over, run it up, you know, to the courtroom, and that stuff happens quite a bit. So as far as we go, that's the main things. We need more office space, need some more meeting space, and obviously I'd like to get our child support division in with the criminal division.
Thanks. And then I mentioned probation, because probation is also something I think we've talked about several times about space issues and whether there might be a better place for them. Right now in the probation office, each officer does have their own office, and as I told Scott, I'm not trying to begrudge or take things from them. They all need their own offices, but the probation officers have their own offices, and the prosecuting attorneys and the judges don't.
Sounds fair.
Yeah, right, yeah. Sounds about right. There's no room in the probation department for any sort of expansion, and I know, you know, spending money we don't have, we really need another juvenile probation officer at some point in the very near future. There's no space for that. We need probably sooner than later a pretrial services coordinator, which is something that Brian has applied for through the community corrections department. So whether that's something that would be housed over at community corrections, which I think they're out of space also, or through the probation department, we have no space for that. They have no conference or meeting space, and their offices are divided between the second and the floor and the basement. We've got 2 probation officers upstairs, including Scott, who's one of the directors, and then Joey, who's in the basement with the rest of them. So that's not ideal. And then the second paragraph here I put is just the things that I think we need as a minimum, and I don't have any solutions today, and I know we're here to talk about maybe a way forward. I know there's been some talk about there's been some talk about relocating the probation department for a long time for a lot of reasons, and I'm not opposed to moving the probation department, but moving the probation department doesn't create hearing space, and if it does create space, it creates it on the 3rd floor, on the basement, and we're on the 2nd floor. So you know, what I see that we need to take a look at is we need all the judicial offices in the same location: the courts, the magistrate, prosecutor, probation, clerk, community corrections as close as possible, and the jail and the sheriff's office. We all need to be in the same location, or at a minimum within walking distance of each other. Very often in court, when I'll get done with somebody in a criminal hearing and tell them I want them to go report immediately to probation, well, it's easy to do when they just have to walk down the hall and report to probation. But if they have to leave the building, go to another building, maybe they don't know where that building is, or certainly if they need to get in a vehicle, and many of them, you'd be surprised still at how many don't have transportation. If they had to get from here 3 miles away to get to the probation department, I couldn't trust that they would do that. You know, as we talked last Friday kind of as a group, everybody that was here talked as a group, and I think all strongly feel that all 3 hearing rooms, for a lot of reasons, should be on the same level in the same building. Putting us on the same level will allow us to share staff. Right now we're actually operating with less staff than we really should have, but if you were to add magistrate space at another location or even in the basement, we would need to add staff in order to man a window, man telephones, which we don't have to do right now. Right now, even today, I've got a nice big courtroom that I can do I have a lot of flexibility in my courtroom, but I can only hear one thing at a time. If we had another hearing space in the same area, we could trade space to where if I only had a hearing today, I had a hearing that I needed 2 people at, I could have gone to the magistrate's courtroom. The magistrate had hearings with 6 or 8 people. She could have stayed in the big courtroom. So if we have space close to each other, we can trade around, or even if we had 2 jury trials, if Judge Hauser, who has a jury box in her courtroom, might need to move to a magistrate, it could accommodate more trials at once. Obviously, that's less confusing to the public. It allows the attorneys and the prosecutors to meet more quickly back and forth between the courts. As Doug mentioned, moving the inmates around when we do have to move them around from court to court is problematic enough. If we have to move them from floor to floor, that's going to cause a real snafu for them. We only have 1 jury room now, but we can conserve and share and repurpose jury rooms if we are all on the same floor. One thing we really need, as I said, is some space for attorney conferences, and Josh can speak a little bit from the Public Defender's Office, could speak a little bit about how difficult it is to talk to clients in the hallway. We have no private space for that, which is something virtually all other courthouses have. But what we're asking for is for the magistrate for a permanent hearing room. Doesn't need to be a full courtroom. As I've said, something about the size of this room or as much space as we can get. Enough room for the judge, the court reporter, a witness, 2 or 3 counsel tables, and it must be accessible to the public. It'd also be great if we could have a 4th hearing room to where special judges, senior judges, 4D magistrates could use the extra 4th courtroom. A lot of courthouses have extra space for that too. I don't know, Judge Hauser, if you want to add anything.
I don't have a lot to add. I'm in support of everything he said, and Chris as well. I think especially during this COVID time, if you've been on the upper floor of the courthouse at any point, it got a little scary looking. I think I remember in the early COVID days, Michelle from the health department came up to do a walkthrough, and I don't remember who was even all involved, but Jason and I know. And we were kind of doing a walkthrough of the top floor just to see, how many people could realistically be in our courtrooms and still conduct court safely with social distancing. And I know that when we got to the prosecutor area, we kind of just said to her, we opened like the jury room door and it was filled with people, and we just said, you don't even look that way right now, because they're in there like sardines. So I agree with what Jason said, and Chris as well, that with staffing up there, we have way more staff than we have space, and so sharing is just not going to be what we need going forward. Also, the 4th courtroom, I will add that if we could have a small area, I routinely have special judges come in, or senior judges, and so during this COVID period especially, when someone needed to come from another community, I would basically move out, because to enter my bench, they're coming through my office. So, we've had, during COVID, I know there were times of shutdown in, I think, Washington and Clark and maybe even Floyd, and, my girls would say, Judge so-and-so is going to be here tomorrow for a hearing on your bench, and they'd be coming from one of those counties. So, I would usually say, okay, this will be my time to work from home. So if we had an extra space where we could put that judge, that would be great, in addition to, the space that Judge Frazier, Magistrate Frazier needs. But frequently I've been moved off my own bench because they often don't check with their schedules too, and so I'll be on the bench and my girls will come out and say, Judge so-and-so's here from whatever other county, he's got a hearing that starts in 15 minutes, so I'd have to conclude mine and leave. When I go to other counties, that's usually not a problem because they have that extra space to put us in. So I think that's about all I have to add, but it's beyond time. I think we really, really need the extra space, and we can do what we're supposed to do with our 3rd person, our 3rd courtroom, if we actually, have that. Right now, we're just all juggling and moving out of each other's way.
Yeah, and it's impossible to, I don't want to get into too much of the details. You can only imagine how difficult it is for us to schedule. And she does a lot of the volume, but I do a lot of the things that take more time. So if I have a hearing, maybe it's just going to be 2 people, but it's going to take 2 hours. I can't find 2 hours where I can schedule 2 people because she's got 45 people showing. We had, 40 people scheduled this morning and 35 people scheduled this afternoon. I don't have time to have 2 hours to have a hearing. It's very hard to find time.
We did that this week too. We had someone that needed a couple-hour hearing, and you're usually going a couple months out before you can find that slot in your calendar where your courtroom's open for that. And Judge Frazier comes into my courtroom on Wednesday. She shares office space with Jason and uses his court 4 days a week, but on Wednesday she covers in my court. In the ideal situation, we're supposed to be moving cases through a little quicker. So if she had her own courtroom space, she would be handling part of my docket on a Wednesday morning, and then I would be in my own courtroom doing my own cases. But now, as it is, she comes to my courtroom to handle some of my stuff on Wednesday morning. I have to work from home or work from my office, and I can't do in-court hearings. So.
And on Wednesday mornings, we have a child support referee who schedules every Wednesday morning. So my courtroom every Wednesday morning is tied up with 4D stuff. Her courtroom every Wednesday morning is tied up with things Judge Frazier's doing for Judge Hauser. So on Wednesdays, we have 4 judges in 2 courtrooms. So it creates a real bottleneck. Josh, do you have anything you might want to add from defense attorney's private practice perspective?
Well, the comment as far as, I mean, I don't know how many times I've been meeting with a client in the little vestibule area, or one of the judges walks by, one of the prosecutors walks by, another a sheriff's department, an investigator. I mean, it constantly happens. So, I mean, you just put yourself in the shoes of that inmate. You're trying to discuss privately with your attorney your case. You just can't do that. There is no building, no area that we can go to right now where we can have a real conversation with the client. Signing paperwork, that's it. There's no area. A lot of the conference rooms in neighboring counties will be able, it's usually a smaller room, but we'll at least go there, have a desk, have a table, we can sit in there, sign paperwork, discuss things privately. We just do not have that area here.
And I put on the back, I won't go through it all, but I put on the back what other counties have been dealing with recently. As I said, Jackson's added a judge in the past little while, but they've added a judge. Clark County's added 3 judicial officers in the past 5 years. Jennings County will be adding. Jefferson just added. Everybody's dealing with space issues, and everybody's solving those issues in one way or the other. So my suggestion, I don't have a solution. We talked about short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans, which I've talked about for a long time. The short-term plan was we use this space when we can. I could go through for a half hour. I can tell you the hardships that creates for the courts. I don't need to. I appreciate being able to use the space. I think you guys understand the situation we find ourselves in. A midterm plan. I know we've talked about moving probation or finding room in the basement versus a long-term plan. And a long-term plan, may involve doing things that are more substantial. But I think the reasonable place to start for me is, and I think that most people here agree, is I would like permission to engage with somebody, an architect, perhaps the people that we talked to out front, about whether it's possible to repurpose the prosecutor's office into a hearing room. And I'm not saying where we're going to move the prosecutor, but if I get an architect in here and he says you can't get the public in and out of there, or there's not enough square footage, then I know that plan doesn't work.
And that's a question I was going to ask you there. And do you have any? I don't. Do you have any idea, like, what is the state minimum for square footage for a superior and circuit courtroom? Is there any certain size that it has to be? Do you know?
There's no requirement insofar as it has to be so many square feet. One thing, if you're looking at a courtroom versus what we're calling a hearing room is. In a courtroom, you'd need a 14-person jury box. We don't need that in this space. We have a jury box in my courtroom. She has a jury box in her courtroom. We can make use of that space. So there's no mandated space. The more space, the better. The more public you can get in, the better. You can go around to courthouses and see what other people are doing. There's a magistrate's courtroom in Floyd County where it's just big enough for 1 row of seats in the back of the courtroom, and you can get maybe 10 people from the public in there. Like I outlined, what we need is enough space for a judge, a court reporter, a witness, a couple counsel tables, and some room for the public. So I would say something this size probably is pretty close to the minimum, would you say? Yeah.
I think if all you're
But the
doing,
more space we can get, the better. The more the public we can get in, the better. And the more flexible it would be to be able to use a room for one thing or another.
if we're looking just some architect to see right now if you can reposition the
Upstairs.
prosecutor's office, I think it'd be nice to know how much even that's gonna cost
Right.
something.
Right.
I think there's 2 or 3 buildings we gotta look at for possibly when this happens, we can move in. We still got the old health department, we got the health department some space. And I think we still got the Nazarene church we could use. I know that's full of stuff, but we'd have to start reconfiguring things. Honestly, I think we're gonna have a temporary fix here, because I'm gonna take a guess in the next 5 to 10 years,
It's tough, I know that.
we'll be talking seriously about an annex.
Right.
I don't know if we can stop it. I don't know if I want it.
Do
I
you-
just see that coming.
Do you have any figures on the last 10 years, the number of cases that it's gone up compared to 10 years ago or 5 years ago?
I can get you that, but I can tell you, and I think Judge South, I'm sure Judge South and Judge Duval would agree with me that we've needed a magistrate for about 15 years. And I think they would tell you that those numbers would support it that far back. We've been in the top 10 for 10 years before we got a magistrate, and that was 3 years ago. So I can look and get some of those numbers, but I think you're gonna find even 10 years back, we were as busy as we are now. The prosecutor's office has added some people, they needed some people, they added some people. Probation office has added some people, so that's eaten up some space, so.
And this is, I've been on the bench 10 years, so I worked with Judge Duval when he was still circuit court judge, and it was definitely, I mean, the numbers had been up for quite a while when he was still here. And it was something that we had talked about numerous times, was, you know, trying to get the magistrate before he even left office. So, yeah, it's nothing new in the last 10 years. I mean, I would think probably for 4 or 5 years at least, his last 4 or 5, it was something he knew that our numbers were showing we were up there at the top for needs. So it's been a long time coming to get the magistrate.
And I would guess with that wouldn't cause any more security issues. I mean,
No, I don't think
you
so.
said the same.
If we're all here in the same place, I
Yeah,
don't think so.
yeah, yeah.
Now, we looked at a lot of, when we went around, and John mentioned long-term solutions or annex, we went to Jackson and Washington, both of them have built brand-new judicial centers.
Yeah.
My personal attitude is, and I don't, you know, I'll take what I can get, but my personal attitude is the courts ought to be in the courthouse, and if we're looking for space, let's find a way to keep, let's not build, it's a lot cheaper to build office space than it is courtroom space. And I feel like if we can leave the courts in the courthouse, that ought to be our goal. That's not the option everybody's taken, but, you know, if you build a nice, like Jackson County's building is $13 million, I'm not asking for a $13 million building. You built me a nice $13 million building and moved the courts over there, what are you gonna use the second floor for at that point? You know, a nice, big, beautiful courtroom. Marcia's courtroom is certainly very well equipped as well. And so if we can find a way to get a little more office space and some hearing room and get the public in and out of a hearing room upstairs, keep a jury room, maybe add another conference room upstairs, see if that's even possible. And then if that's possible, then we can start trying to figure out what we do in the short term, midterm versus the long term.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I feel like we're gonna have to make some kind of moves. And I think we either use existing space or buy something else, which is a possibility. But I don't think it's long-term answers here.
What I'm saying is, either direction we go here, is if we create the space on the 3rd floor for you, in this court system,
Right.
then the prosecutor's office has got to go somewhere, and we don't have nowhere to go with that.
Right.
The only way I see to free any space up, in this courthouse right at the moment, is, I think, is looking at the probation leaving out of here, and maybe even the 4-H downstairs. That's the only place that I can think that we would have any room to do anything, and then reconfigure and try to make that work for now. I have no other ideals. Is either one of you got any ideals on that?
Well, my thing has always been with moving probation out of the courthouse, because now we have the courthouse secured, is now you're gonna have another facility that has to be secured because of probation. So in turn, there's gonna be an additional cost for us to hire security for that building. So, I'd like to see probation stay here. I mean, I'd like to see 4-H get out of here, and move somewhere else. But I mean, as far as, I don't know if 4-H left and if EMA left, would that create enough space down there for, you know, prosecutor's office or prosecutor's, you know, area or whatever? It'd be close to probation. Is there a probation officer offices on the 3rd floor as well?
Yes, yes.
So I mean, how many offices up there would they have up there?
They have
Just
two offices and a reception area probation has up there, and then they have the offices in the basement.
So why is there two different areas for them?
because there's no room in the basement.
Okay. Alright. So they are utilizing some space up there because they're lacking it where they're at?
Yeah.
Okay.
That, it used to be drug and alcohol.
Yeah, drug and alcohol.
Yeah.
We took over drug and alcohol,
That's true.
acquired those
Yeah.
offices.
Okay, well, that's why I was asking, because I thought there was offices upstairs as well as in the basement, so.
Yeah, that's right, I'd forgotten, but Scott's right. Drug and alcohol used to be kind of its own thing, and it was up there, and then when drug and alcohol was merged with probation, then we
Okay,
didn't have a drug and alcohol counselor, so we hired more probation officers, and that's what.
okay.
And Judge Mounts laid out in his paperwork he gave you, the offices that we all recommend stay together, and it would recommend probation staying at least close, but preferably in the same building as the courts and the prosecutor and clerk. And that's how I think pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we toured these other facilities in Jackson and Washington and that are remarkable, and John Lisby was with us that day, they pretty much kept those
Yeah.
offices together. And that's,
Yeah.
usually the tax offices are separate and those offices stay
It
together.
sounds like if anybody's getting a bad end of the deal, it'd be the prosecutor.
Well,
He's going to the basement. Gotta do what we gotta do.
We'll do what's needed for the.
I know it, I know, you and I talked about that, we've gotta have a court together.
But but if we move those two spaces downstairs, I mean, I've already tried to present a plan to move 4-H out of here anyway, especially with probation being down there. I never liked kids being around prisoners and people that are, I guess they're not prisoners technically, they're on probation, but I didn't like that interaction with 4-H kids and those people in that area. So I've always been a advocate about getting 4-H out of here. So, and I know when Greg was still here, he talked about he could move his stuff out and give us that space as well. So, I mean, that'd be something I'd be in favor of moving some people around. But where are you gonna put them, and where are you gonna find the money to support a place for that?
I've talked to Jessica a little bit about it, and she says I think they could move emergency management out there, the old health department, and it'd be paid for with the COVID funds. And, but those funds are apparently only good for this year. So I know the health department's wanting to use it too. I don't know if the health department's under COVID or not, they might be, but either way, I think some of that could be paid for, a lot of it, maybe 100% could be paid for by COVID. And we're talking probably, I'm gonna guess $100,000 to fix that place up, but if we're gonna look for places, that's one, and I haven't even looked inside. I'm gonna have Jerry take me sometime into the old Nazarene church over here and see if that's a space, maybe not, I know you'd want to use it at one time.
It's open, we actually got it cleared out, we just got stuff stored in it, it's just there because.
And that may be a good place for 4-H, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out. They would be coming in off the other street, not coming in off the jail area. So I think there's some room to clear 2 big spaces out down there, really, as soon as we don't want to start working on them. And maybe we ought to consider that, and I know Mike's looked real hard at the health department, the one we're using now, and who knows, maybe we can reconfigure and find some space out there to put someplace too. But I think we got some options here, I don't think it's like, we ain't got nowhere to go.
No,
We've got
there's no good answer, there's no snapping your fingers and making it happen answer.
And maybe
I
we
think
can
there's
agree on
places to go, it's coming up with the money to, fix an area that is gonna suffice the 2 people we're moving, so,
If I may, I think the prosecutor's office, I think.
you got a budget you can pay for it?
I wish. I think we need almost an entire basement down there to.
So that's the other thing, we don't lose sight of the fact that they're sitting on top of each other upstairs as it is. So the
Yeah.
court needs notwithstanding, the prosecutor's office is in a bad situation.
I don't know how much square footage is even
I think-
downstairs, I know there's.
Yeah,
I don't think that EMA and probation would be enough, and even,
4-H.
4-H.
The thing with 4-H is you do have a conference room down there in the 4-H area now. So there is a conference room in the 4-H area. I mean, there's 4 or 5 offices down there in that 4-H area.
I guess kind of back to what Judge Brown asked for too, asked for some permission or guidance, I guess, from the group, maybe anybody you all tell us to look at the stuff, somebody who's more knowledgeable than we are about whether things can be reconfigured and we can fit. We've been kind of doing this for 2 years already, so where do we go from here? And I think that's what I was asking. Can somebody else get involved and tell us what we need to be
I don't have
doing?
a problem doing it as long as the council can find the money to pay for someone that can do that. One of the things I looked at before, because I know you brought it up about having a space for, just like Josh was talking about, having a space for people to talk to their clients and stuff. One of the things I thought about and looked at was taking one of the, whether it was the Veterans Affairs person, taking that space, splitting it into 2 little offices
Yeah.
where you could walk in, shut the door, and you'd be in there with the desk and your client.
Well, yeah, well, that's, and I talked, yes, you're right, and there, but if you think about the elevator, there's 4D, which is part of the prosecutor's office, and then there's Veterans Affairs. So, one of the things we had talked about with the sheriff is if we could, 4D needs to be with the prosecutor's office anyway, so if we could move 4D and Veterans Affairs, then you could turn 4D into a holding area for prisoners. So instead of them sitting in the courtroom, they're sitting in that holding area, and when Josh needs to talk to them, he can take them right there, and the jail staff sitting right there watching them through a glass door and knows, so that'd be a really good use for that, those 2 little odd spaces behind them. Because there's a hallway behind the elevator that connects those spaces. So,
Yeah, I thought that was something you
Yeah.
could utilize for some of those offices, some
Absolutely.
of the needs you were asking.
No, that's the space I would be looking at for that, so you're right about that.
I don't have a problem asking the council to find some money to
For
try to
feasibility,
at least
just to
get you,
See what we
get
can
you
do.
a
upstairs.
sense of mind of what you can, what
Well,
you
we
can't
can't do
do.
that. If they tell us, you know what, you can't get the public in and out reasonably from the prosecutor's office, then that's not gonna work, and we're gonna have to.
Well, I don't know how
find
many of those walls up there are
something.
actually,
Can come and go, and yeah, I don't know.
I don't know how many of them can be just wiped out and
Yeah.
start over.
Yeah, I don't know, so I'd like to. Figure that out.
I just recommend, like you said, using the company we're already using out
Yeah,
here. Not because anybody else wouldn't be any better, but if we got one, it'd be,
they've already got the blueprints, I think.
Yeah.
so,
but that's up to you, I suppose. But that'd be up to us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have,
Like Jason said too, everybody around us is taking steps to, to get space for the magistrates. They either have in the last few years or are working on it now. Who gets one? Somebody gets one by July of next year. That's
Jennings.
And so it's a problem. It's not just a problem unique to Scott County. It's a problem everybody's been dealing with. I know John went with us when we toured, and if you haven't toured Washington County, Jackson County, and you're in the area someday and can stop in, it's remarkable.
And I just wouldn't stay out of the Clark County courts. That didn't impress me at all.
And if you're looking, those both have built new justice centers. If you're looking for somewhere who's built an annex and they left their courtrooms and stuff in the courthouse, moved the other offices elsewhere, Ripley County they built an annex for their non-court offices. They left their court services in the courthouse.
Yeah. Been in there.
That's one of the things I'm thinking about here is again, what do you do? What we do today needs to last for 20 years anyway. And whether or not we can do that sufficiently in this courthouse by reconfiguring, remodeling the upstairs, I don't know that. That's one of the things that I think we're gonna have to figure out is, to spend $250,000, and that's probably cheap, to reconfigure the upstairs and then be back here in 3 years or 4, that don't make good sense to me. So I think whatever we do, we need to look at it as long-term, is what's gonna suffice for this community for the, 25 years down the road, and not just something that's, put a Band-Aid on something and then come back and have to do it all over again. And Mike, I don't know what the finances are, but you do.
And shake his head like that.
You were shaking your head, yes, so I'm assuming, yes, let's go on with it.
Go ahead and spend it.
We do recognize that, and we do recognize the fact that, there's gotta be something, I think, in the near future done. We just need to be able to do it in a way that's, feasible for this community, and, that's gonna.
Long-term.
Yeah, but it's got to be long-term. I don't think we can look at the next couple of years. We gotta be looking for the next 20 years anyway. And if you're not willing to look that far down the road, I think we're probably gonna be in trouble here.
And I totally agree. The only exception I'll give to that is this year, maybe.
Yeah,
It's got me in a little bit of a quandary on how I wanna go with things, just because
well, that's,
I'm kinda waiting to see how our economy recovers.
This is,
and we're doing an awful lot by video right now, and we're getting by with the space we got. If, you know, to be honest, if we weren't forced to do so much by video, I'd have been down here 9 or 10 months ago because our hands were really tied. But even doing the video stuff, for me right now, because her desk is in my office, I love her to death, she's a great resource, I'd love to have her there, but if she's in the courtroom and I wanna do a hearing at my desk, she's coming and going, or the court staff's walking through, I've gotta find, oftentimes I'll come down here, and it's just me and my court reporter with people appearing by video, because this is the only place I can sit without having somebody walk through. But I don't have any idea how much your study was to do the security out front, but
$2,000, wasn't it?
you know.
I think that's what it was.
And this one may be more than that, but I'd like to talk, whether it's the same architect or not, to send me an architect that can come talk to me about what we got upstairs and see what our options are. That's where I'd like to start.
let us look at that, because, I mean, in all honesty, some of these architects, if they are the one that does the design and then you use them for the build, they'll take it off the back end too, so it might be something that we can.
And for what it's worth, I think everybody says option 4. Again, spending other people's money, but I like that last option.
Is that the glass one or the brick
Yeah,
one?
the glass one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate everybody's time. If there's any questions we can answer. If anybody else has anything to add, I appreciate everybody coming down. You know, like I said, if we can find space, if the prosecutor's office can't be repurposed, then we're gonna have to look at some other options anyway. So I think that's a good place to start.
Maybe we need to get one of those small house designers coming in here.
Yeah, we could. Well,
You
you know, I keep
got-
saying,
Yeah.
what does the city do with Santa's castle in the off-season?
We can store that right out there, that's no problem.
Three probation
Add a
officers in
lean-to
there.
off the side of it, it'd
Yeah.
work perfect, wouldn't
Oh
it?
my
It'd be
goodness. I might want that, I might give Judge Frazier my courtroom then and take that, that would be awesome.
Just for thought, like I said, if we're gonna use a COVID money for that stuff, we gotta do it this
Gotta
year.
get moving.
And
Otherwise, it's gone.
And I believe Jessica gave you some, which I didn't get a copy of that, but there's structural things, and she talked about the
Yeah.
buildings and what they will and will not support as far as letting you apply for reimbursement. So I think that would be a good thing to hand over to the architect to analyze what we could even ask for reimbursement on. We might get a partial reimbursement. So that's why I keep telling everybody, always have plan B that, you know, you've got your money for, because not all of plan A, if it's COVID, may work out for you in your favor, so.
But I mean, that would, if we don't use it, we lose it. And if we're
But-
gonna
but
save
if
some
it's
money, that's
applicable,
something we gotta
yeah.
jump on, I think.
Yeah, but there's a structural detail
Yeah.
that it has to be followed, or you're not gonna get, it's not gonna be approved by them, and you'll need to know how to,
Yeah.
where you're gonna get your money from regardless.
It's all taxpayers' money, but it won't be local money.
It won't be reimbursed.
Yeah. So use it or lose it, we gotta use
Yeah.
it.
So I'd say you need to get a copy to the architect, whomever you want to.
I don't have a problem, like, you know, sending it to the council to see if they can find the money, so.
I agree.
I mean, I know they're here, they probably don't wanna come back, so.
well, I think,
I don't mind that. We can go to council meeting and talk to them too.
well, I think, I'm certainly in favor of that too, at least finding the money to do a, study, and, whether or not, and that may not even work upstairs. You may not be able, I don't know what's,
I thought it
the
would be
walls.
great, you know, Josh brought me blueprints, and I thought, this is, you know, we can figure this out, and I'll pencil something out, and then there's these 2 bathrooms, right, you know?
Yeah.
So
That's
it may
what-
not work.
That's
but-
what I'm saying, I don't
Yeah.
know what's a support wall and what's not up there,
Right.
where you can reconfigure. It may not even, it may be utilized to the best of its ability now, I don't know
And that
that.
could be.
But, that's the reason they have architects and people that's, certainly a lot smarter than I am to do that, so I'm willing, let's just be honest, you know. I'm willing to at least get somebody to look at it and give us an idea to where we can, have something to go forward on. Again, that's the only thing I know
Now,
that we can do.
that's all I'm asking for, and that'd be great if we could do something like that, so. You give me permission I'll call the guy myself, or gal myself, to just give me permission to engage in that.
I'll make a motion.
I'll I'll second that, but I thought we were, he's
It's
going
money.
to council.
Yeah, go to council and find
Well,
out.
yeah, the motion is let,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
We had some council this morning.
Yeah, I'm good, I'll make it unanimous, I'm good with that. Again, I think that, I mean, until we get them questions answered, I don't think there's any other question you're gonna answer. I don't, until we get that, it's can it be done? Now, if that can be done up there, then we can start looking
Then we can start figuring out.
the basement or whatever we need to look at then, but
It'd be nice
if it can't be done, then something else, you know.
the sooner they get done, the better, if we're gonna use this money
If
this
it
year.
can't be done, I'll just ask for Jackson County's blueprints and we'll just.
Yeah.
There we go. Uh-huh.
Why not?
They'll lay on the
Yeah.
counter, they'll like,
It's kinda like
Are you up for
Christmas, you could ask for whatever.
No, not for 22.
Uh,
Yes, but 22.
I really
That might
hope
be a
we
different
can get moving.
conversation.
I was just gonna say, I really hope we can get moving on it though, because I feel like we've been doing this for years, and we've been working on it for about a year before that, so I hate to be back here in another 6
Judge,
months or a year
I'm
again, when
guessing
we're at
that
the 3-year
we
mark.
Come up with an answer here.
Feeling like we're at the beginning
Next year
stages
before we
again,
get
it's
it all
just-
in there.
I think,
And that's
here's,
why I think.
on our
Building
end,
out there, the October fund,
Yeah.
we can get moving a lot.
I'm good with it.
Well, on a temporary
On
basis.
Their end,
It's
you'll
not
find that
ideal to
out
have
tomorrow
us
when you
at
go
different
see
levels
them, I
where you
guess.
get EMA
I mean, that's the only thing I know.
EMA on a temporary basis. and then-
Once they get a plan, then I think it's simple
That would
to
at
move
least give us
forward at that
something
point, try to
permanent.
find the money to do it.
She said,
But until we
And I
know
know
what
4-H
we can
wants to
do,
go
I don't see
I
anything that
think
we,
over there would be
you know.
perfect.
Well, I mean, like I said,
At least
in the
for now.
beginning, I think the ideal situation was moving 4-H and 911 and getting a master, space, but
And then I
if you're
think-
wanting everything on the 3rd floor, then that changes that scope of everything, so.
As I was telling him, I think that might be something that we could live with, but I'm not sure it's a permanent solution. We'll take what space we can get. I think there's a lot of reasons why it makes a lot of sense to have us all together.
Oh, yeah.
But, if we could move EMA and move 4-H and get her down there in a month, I'm not saying that's
Yeah.
feasible, but we'd take that for now, and then we can
It's a
figure
whole lot
out.
safer than what we have now. I mean, we're
Yeah.
working under COVID conditions, and I don't even wanna go visit the prosecutor's office.
So she,
Stay by the
so
way.
she come You guys eat dinner together?
Well, the thing-
Anyway, I-
They're a little too crowded.
And I don't know, and
It's a
Mike,
$250,000 move either way, because if we move 4-H someplace,
Yeah.
it's $250,000 to upgrade a space for them and 911 or EMA. So I mean, either way, it's $250,000 to do anything at this point.
I think, I think you're probably missing a boat there. I think it's a quarter of a million to do the upstairs.
No, I'm not
And a
talking
quarter of a
about
million to move them.
I'm talking a $250,000.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, you're looking at, I think if you can do all this for $1 million, you're probably gonna be
It's
flying.
$225 a square foot, so
I mean,
figure.
But let me ask you one other question here, and Mike, you may have an answer better than I do on this, but I know probation, what is there, per day, how many people comes through the probation department down there, you think? Do you have any?
Guesstimate, 50.
Okay, and then
We
through,
have 50 to 100 coming in and out of court, if we were letting everybody come in.
Just for information, I just had, the guys at the counter give me a count, and they said from the beginning of March the 1st, up until yesterday, Chris,
3,888 people. It's closer to 4,000 now.
that's come
And
through.
we're,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's not
And
including employees,
No,
correct?
that's not.
That's
And that's
just
also,
outside.
and not including all the people we're not letting
That's
come in
not
right
court.
now. I mean,
I've
we're-
only
And see,
had a
and that's
big-
one of the questions that I think we're gonna need to answer too, is when probation is in here, and a lot of people's probably, I'm sure you're doing some of the probation where they're not coming in, correct?
Yeah.
But at some point, we don't want to lose sight of, how many people can be in this building at a time too, is through the fire marshal. And I think that's one of the things that you're gonna have to look at, because you've got your
three courts
probation,
going
you've
on
got your
there.
3 courts in the top,
Yeah.
you got to, that's one of the things that we need to look at,
Yep.
is make sure that we don't lose sight of that, and fall out of compliance in that area too.
Reaching out to, and I don't know who asked the question once before, is about the trial you were gonna have upstairs that got moved. State fire marshal is like, whatever you think it is. I mean, what's it, because I asked what's the capacity of that room, and I know when you go into any banquet hall or any place else that has a sign on the door that says X amount of people, they act like courtrooms don't have
Yeah.
that, so. but
I
it's-
never thought about that, but that time we had, yeah, we had as many chairs as we could fit in there and had people overflowing in the jury room. Yeah, you're right about that. I just think-
The only thing, and I know what you're saying, but I guarantee you if something goes
Oh, I
wrong,
guarantee that.
you'll be standing in front of somebody like these.
Yeah.
And
I'll be
explain,
standing right
and I
there.
don't mind standing in front of them if I've got a good reason, and I got good rationale, but I don't wanna stand there, with, I don't know.
Just say you didn't know he had them in there.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Anyway, I'm
go
sure
to,
there's a number.
you're welcome to continue on to the
I'll talk to the
council
council and see.
and,
what
see if there's any funds available that we can do some kind of study
Can I-
for
do I
that.
need to
and-
be on an agenda ahead of time, or can I talk to them about that tomorrow, or?
I think we can, now that we kind of know, we can kind of insert you, she's got her agenda prepared already for tomorrow. But if you make a motion to allow consideration for that, they can vote that in on the agenda item tomorrow and talk to you guys about that. So if you want to, at your allotted time,
You're on the agenda anyway.
Yeah. I'm on
yes,
the
and you
agenda.
guys are early
Judge, you
today.
won't have
And
a-
I actually,
you won't have a
I've asked
cost amount no
Jason and
matter
I'm
what
not
you
gonna be
do
able to be here,
tomorrow.
so they'll.
What's that?
they'll
You won't have
explain
a
it. Okay.
Money figure ready for them by tomorrow, I mean, it's like.
Well, no, I mean, what I need is permission to hire, or money to hire an architect to give me an idea. and I
Yeah,
don't-
but I mean, you don't know how much.
I don't know how
it's
much
gonna be.
it's
You
gonna
have to
be.
go there tomorrow.
But I mean, if they can approve me for $5,000, okay, then I can talk to the architect myself,
And then
yeah.
I've got, and if,
Yeah.
do you guys want to
When you're
go
on the
with
agenda tomorrow, you bring it out and we.
Alan Ritz? Do
We'll vote
you
whether
guys
to
want to
discuss it or
send
not.
him that direction, or does he need to come back and talk to you guys later if council says okay?
I'm fine with Alan Ritz, I'm fine with him, I'm fine, because they're doing it outside anyway, looking, gave us the drawings on it, I'm fine with that. Again, if it's gonna get real entailed and get real expensive,
Yeah, I'm
then at that
not-
point, we're probably gonna look at opening it up.
Yeah.
But, I think at this point, I'd be fine with them looking at it. But I also believe that, while we're doing this, I do think that you look at, fixing that problem up there, don't fix the problem downstairs. I think we gotta look at getting with Chris and saying, okay, how much square footage do you think you need for the prosecutor's office? And let's do it all at once. And then, at that point, that shortchanges the probation department, which we'll probably have to find a place to put them. And I know what you're saying about that, but I'm gonna tell you, it looks to me like, as far as way things is going in this world right now, I think if it's any kind of municipality or any kind of building, I think they're all gonna have to be secured one of these days, to where there's some security when they enter. That's what it's looking to me like. And I know what you're saying, that's another cost, but again, whoever thought we'd be securing the courthouse and having a metal detector and all that? In my lifetime, I never dreamed that, but I think they're all it's coming to that, every building. If it's a municipality or schools, all schools are secure now. So I think that's just one of the things that you're gonna have to face. So I'd like to see all of it looked at the same time if we could.
And I can see a day down the road, none of us will probably be here, but it'll all be back under one building, a judicial building, but that's
Yeah.
in the future.
All right, so I got some guidance, so I know when I'll talk to council tomorrow and from there.
Good luck, Judge.
Thank you, good luck, and
Thank you.
we'll
Thank you, Judge Frazier.
move as quickly as
I have a
possible.
tendency to overlook you sometimes.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, if there's nothing else, then we will, I tell you, can we just recess out of open, or do we need
I'm
to?
actually average to
Three,
so we'll
okay.
adjourn and
So
we'll go.
we need a motion to adjourn this one.
I'll make a motion.
Second, motion made by Mike, second by John, it's unanimous, we are adjourned. We ready?
We're going.
All right, welcome everybody, this special meeting, August 24th. Again, we're here for one reason and one reason only, and that is that, to name an EMS director. We did have a second go-around of interviews here tonight. And before we get into this, I am going to tell you that we have had what I think is an exceptional, good applications from start to finish on this. I think we had some very good. Not everybody can get a job, we understand that. It's, you try to pick the best one you can, and it's been a process, to say the least. And I'm gonna be honest, I think, out of the last 3 that we narrowed it down to, I feel like probably, in my mind, either one of them can do the job. That's my thoughts. So, I don't know, Mike, you, anything, and John?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that a little bit. I think we had quality candidates. There were, you know, obviously, a couple in my mind that stood out. I'll say the same thing I said the other night. To me, this is a big hire. This is, you know, I don't want to be dire here, but I mean, I think the service needs, the best hire we can have right now to, move it forward and to right the ship, I guess. Not that it's sinking, but it's in a situation where, I think, it needs to go in a different direction than it has been. And I think that's where I think, my vote's gonna be tonight, is, picking the best person, I think, to lead us, forward. So, John, you wanna say something, or you? So, I guess that John didn't wanna say anything, then I'm gonna make a motion to hire Nick Olick. So, that's my choice.
All right, we have a motion on the table for Nick Olick. Do I hear a second? Do we have any other nominations for the job?
I'm going to make a motion to hire Shannon Mount.
We have a motion on the table for Shannon Mount. Do I hear a second for Shannon Mount? It kind of looks like this is falling on one person here, don't it?
That's why you get the big bucks.
Oh, yeah. I will say, I'm gonna say one thing here, and I'm gonna echo what Mike said a little bit, but folks, REMS is something that, I was here when it started. We take a lot of pride in this, and we are going to move this forward. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. It's going to move forward. And like I say, I hate to, I guess the position that I'm in here, that it comes down to, because I mean, I could really confuse this. We've got one other one there. If I nominate him, then we're just at a standstill. So that can't work. So with that being said, I am going to say that I'm certainly thankful for everybody that put in for the job, and but at this time, I'm going to have to go with the second on Shannon Mount. So with that being said, we have a motion and a second, and I'll just ask all in favor of offering the job to Shannon. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed, say no.
Nope.
Okay. So with that being said, we will contact Shannon. And again, it's been a tough decision on this, and we will move forward. So with that being said, anything else on anybody's behalf here? If not, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting, and we will close it out.
Motion adjourned.
Second, and we're closed out. Thank you very much.